Alright, we should be live. We're back. We're working on Toph, the first Metalbender. Here she is in case you need a reminder of how she works. And we are at 121 spells right now, so we need to cut half the cards still on the list, and then another card, or just make Mox Opal a land, effectively, since it functionally is a lot of the time anyway. Alright, so not always, though, so you do have to be a little careful with that one, but you can probably get away with it. Alright, Soul Ring and Swords, staying. Do I get rid of Jester's Mask? It's one of the more potent cards that you can keep recurring with Toph. I have said this before, though. A lot of the power in this deck seems to actually come from the fact that your artifacts trigger landfall, more so than being able to recur the same artifact over and over again, although that is also part of it. So, Jester's Mask is one of the more potent cards for the latter strategy, but not necessarily one of the best ones for what Toph is going to win with a lot of the time. It does allow you to disrupt particular opponents if you can get it into play and activate it, so like there is a lot of raw power to this card once it's actually doing its thing. Um hmm. I'm gonna need to cut some stuff, so we'll put it on the potential list. Alright, what is the exact wording on Sacred Ground? I put my quick spin on it, but whatever spell or ability opponent controls causes a land to be put into your graveyard from play, return that land to play. With no further clarification on what exactly an opponent's thing would cause you to put it into the graveyard. So obviously, destroy target land works. Does each player sacrifice a land work? I think that would, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't think if you animate the land, it comes back if it's dealt lethal damage. I don't think. And that's because it's a very roundabout way. Like, instead of the card destroying it, state-based actions take it off of the board as a result of damage. So I don't think if I animate a bunch of my stuff, now granted, I'm animating a bunch of my stuff with metal bending, so that shouldn't matter anyway. This is more along the lines of, oh hey, my opponent just destroyed all of my artifacts, but they count as land, so let's put them all back into play real quick. Like, I'm still running it for that, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it still works if the opponent's card effect causes you to sacrifice a land. But I don't think it works with damage and other similar roundabout ways of technically killing the thing. Like, my opponent has killed my thing, but they have not done it in such a way that it is for sure this is why it's going to the graveyard as far as card effects care about it. It's kind of like the difference between drawing a card and putting a card from the top of your library into your hand. They both have the exact same function, but as far as like what will trigger certain things and what won't, changes dramatically in Magic. Like, you don't take damage from an Underworld Dreams effect if you put the top card of your deck into your hand, even though that is functionally the same as drawing a card in all other circumstances. So, Sacred Ground is kind of like that, in that some effects will cause your land to be put into the graveyard due to an opponent's actions, but are not exactly what it's looking for. And I don't think it counts certain things because of that. I could be wrong though, like that could still work, but I don't think it does. But I'm trying to think if there's any other. Like I said, I'm almost positive sacrificing works as long as it's an opponent's card effect that causes you to sacrifice it. Because it notably does not say destroys your land. It says causes your land to be put into your graveyard from play. So, huh. I guess it wouldn't be a land under their control. I'm wondering. I was thinking about them stealing our artifacts, but that doesn't work because they don't have Toph. So now I'm wondering um, if they were to gain control of, like, let's say they gain control of my strip mine and sacrifice the strip mine to destroy a different land. Now, but it's my strip mine. So when a spell or ability an opponent controls causes a land to be put into your graveyard from play, does that work? Does them sacrificing the strip mine and putting it into my graveyard from play count as a spell or ability an opponent controls? Because that's the cost, not the effect of the ability. And I'm wondering how that works now. Yeah, this thing has surprisingly no rulings or anything on it for a card that has a very odd wording compared to, like, this is not an effect that you normally see on Magic cards. So I'm very curious now how certain things interact with it. I'm going to have to possibly shoot some rules questions at some judges later on. I just found out like a month or so ago that the cranial insertion guys actually stopped updating their website. Like they still take submissions for questions, but they don't actually write an article every week anymore. So I'm glad they still take questions though, because they were like my go-to for hey, I need a judge, like an actual Magic judge that answers questions directly. And I've used them in the past for things. One time though, I hit like some weird roadblock where I like sent them a thing and I never got an answer back. But for the most part, they have answered all of my questions. It was very nice of them. I know it's what they set up to do, but it's still very nice of them because, I don't come up with questions that show up in normal games of Magic. I come up with the thing like, I think my favorite one so far has been Deadpool. It's like, okay, what happens if Deadpool loses all of his card types? It's like, technically that's perfectly fine. A permanent can be in play even though it's lost all of its, like, permanent types. Because you can use Deadpool to copy text boxes, and then those text boxes can take away his card types without giving him any replacement card types. Something like, it's this, but it's no longer a creature type of thing. And so I had sent them questions about that. It's like, how does that work? And they're like, well, it works like this. It's like, oh, okay then. And the answer is he does not actually need to have card type. So if you have him steal the text box of something and then have him turn into something else where he loses his creature type, except that doesn't actually turn him into anything else. It just causes him to stop being a creature until end of turn. It's like, well, now he's just a legendary permanent. That is how he works. But yeah, I'm actually very curious about exactly how Sacred Ground works. I wanted to reread it, like the actual game text, and see, and I'm genuinely surprised there is nothing, there's no rulings on it, because it is a very odd card. Like, you do not normally get that wording. I don't think there's any other card that actually does that now that I think about it. Like, there's no other card that's like, hey, if your opponent kills this thing, you get it back. The closest thing I can think of is Karmic Justice and the thing from like the first Commander set that we wound up not using because it says non-land permanent. Like, where the opponent's killing your things causes you to be able to destroy or make them sacrifice the same type of things. Actually, I think Karmic Justice is the only one that's worded in a similar fashion. Maybe Karmic Justice has. Whatever spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a. Oh, this says destroys a non-creature permanent you control. So, sacrifice effects. If a spell or ability opponent controls destroys Karmic Justice, its ability will trigger. Okay. But it doesn't say anything. Oh, well, it says non-creature, so damage wouldn't ever matter. Okay. So they don't have to word it like that. But this one does not allow for sacrifices because it specifically says destroys a non-creature permanent you control. So that one. So I'm going to guess that because they took the time to mention this one here, that the other one does work with sacrifices. Like Sacred Ground does work if your opponent makes you sacrifice it, just because it's not worded the same way. Anyway, getting back to actually trying to cut cards from this list. I really don't want to cut Storage Matrix, but I'm afraid it's going to go because we need to cut half the cards on the list. And I've just looked at like 15 or so cards in a row, and none of them feel particularly cuttable. Yeah. That's not great. Technically, aggravated assault can go. But I don't think. I'm not inclined to cut it. Like, that's something that's going to have to get all the way towards the end of the list. We do have a couple of other infinite combos, thanks to Maskwood Nexus and Felidar. Or not Felidar, Retreat to Emeria plus Haru. So we do still have those. There's also an argument to be made for taking those out because those are the only two cards that allow Haru to do much of anything. Like, he is a dead card if our commander is already in play. Because we only have like 5 or 6 allies total in the deck. Which could be an argument to take out the infinite combo with him. Just get rid of all 3 of those cards. Because without the 2 cards that allow him to go infinite, Haru is just terrible, basically. Like, we have, like, all of our other earthbending cards are so much better than him. Because we just don't put allies into play. Like, yes, all of our earthbenders, I think, are allies. Maybe the one isn't. Maybe the earthbending student isn't an ally. It's just a human something. Human soldier, human warrior. Lightning Greaves, Mindslaver. Like, even if we're not infinite, we still have, like, the whole point of our deck is partially to have recursive, obnoxious threats, so We can still do things over and over again. We would still have one infinite combo in the Ugin's Nexus plus Sacrifice Outlet, where we just keep time walking forever. I do want to keep Arcbound Ravager because I want the third 0 mana Sacrifice Outlet for this deck. Still like Kiki in the deck. You know what? We probably can lose Doubling Season. We can technically probably lose all of the 1/1 counter synergies, just because that's not like we innately will always have 1/1 counters going on because that's what Earthbending does. So it does kind of hurt to cut something that makes the 1/1 counters better, but I don't even know that we necessarily need that. We have other stuff that works with the 1/1 counters anyway. Like, we don't necessarily need Doubling Season, and therefore probably don't need, I think it's Branching Evolution. Look, I have to cut half the cards on the list. So let's actually cut some cards off of the list that aren't particularly good, or that require more. You know, this thing is tertiary to what we're actually doing, so. Alright, do we need Sacred Ground and Terra Eternal? Because I feel like they're basically the same thing for a lot of cards. I guess I would rather have Terra Eternal, but if I have Terra Eternal, I was gonna say because some of the cards destroy my other lands, like I get like the Urza's Silex lets me pick a bunch of lands and then destroys the rest, so them being indestructible is helpful. But that also means all of our opponent's lands are indestructible and therefore not going to the graveyard either. So at that point, it just becomes another destroy everything except for my lands and artifacts and all of your lands, which we kind of had going on before now. I guess it is nice it doesn't save any of their other things, though, whereas it does save mine. Like, they get to keep all of their lands instead of only 6 of them, but it still kills all of their non-land permanents, so. And technically mine as well, but mine are, you know, now like, a lot more of my stuff is land, so it dodges that. Also, it's giving me indestructible creatures, whereas I don't think. Well, combat damage is not an effect an opponent controls anyway, even if their creature is blocking my creature and kills it in combat. So. But then again, I've animated it with metal bending, so it should come back anyway. Yeah, they both have different interactions. Like, this one lets me, earthbend and have an indestructible creature. The other one, lets me get my stuff back if the opponent tries to board wipe me. Then again, I guess the other one gets my stuff back. Like, if it's indestructible, the board wipe doesn't work anyway. I'm starting to think that Sacred Ground is just worse Terra Eternal. No, the other Sacred. Yeah, okay. The upside to Sacred Ground, I guess, is that it comes back rather than not being destroyed in the first place, so it would trigger my landfall stuff, which is a big part of the deck. That's probably the best argument for Sacred Ground, but I think Terra Eternal is just doing more to protect my stuff, so we get rid of Sacred Ground, keep Terra Eternal. So I have Contagion Engine on Brawl, but I'm wondering if Contagion Engine isn't just worse than things like Spine of Ishtar and Duplicant and whatnot, like cards that aren't on Arena. I don't think Duplicant's on Arena. I forget if I checked properly for it or not, or if I just did not see it at the time and assumed that it wasn't. Because Contagion Engine has like two things going for it. One, if it dies and comes back, it keeps putting -1/-1 counters on all of my opponent's creatures, which can then kill off their creatures with the proliferate while growing my creatures. It is a little slow and clunky though, in comparison to some of the other stuff where I can just like exile a creature with duplicant or destroy any permanent with spine. So obviously it works a lot better against a bunch of 1 and 2 toughness creatures where I'll be able to kill all of them in one go. But we do have a bunch of other actual board wipes in the deck, so yeah, we can probably lose Contagion Engine at this point. Forcer, yes. Nexus, yes. Omnath, Retreat. Build Tireless Tracker, Panharmonicon. Heroic Intervention, yes. Hour of Revelation, yeah. Sage, yes. Tomic. I do like Tomic in the deck. I don't know that we're going to have room for him, actually. Alright, let's cut the Ozolith. Like I said, the 1/1 counter synergies are always going to be present, but they're less essential to the deck than some of the other things we have going on. And I need to make cuts. Like, we have to cut half the cards on the list, and there are so many cards I just look at and go, I don't want to cut this. So, I kind of really need to cut a whole lot of stuff. And so, things I don't want to cut are going to have to go just because they're worse than other options. That's true. I had Warmaker Gunship in because I did not have access to things like Duplicant and Spine of Ishtar. So we could probably cut the Gunship. Just worse than similar cards. Oh no, it is an ally. Okay. I wasn't sure if Earthbending Student was an ally. That is true. Kiki Jiki can't copy most of my Earthbenders. I kind of forgot that he's got that non-legendary clause going for him, and almost all of the Earthbenders are legendary. It's like Badger Mole and Student are the only two he can copy, which is still fine because both of them are gonna make it all the way through. I'm debating cutting Blind Bandit though. After going through the trouble to re-add her to the list because I'd accidentally left her off while grabbing all the other Tophs. But she is weaker than all of the other Tophs. Yeah, I think we can afford to cut her. Look, for every one of these cards down here that is on that I'm not cutting, I have to, aside from bossing, say I actually have to cut another card off of the list. So yeah, let's just get rid of Toph. Like Blind Bandit Toph specifically. Yeah, I literally don't think I have room for a Strionic Resonator. As much as I would like to copy my activated and triggered abilities, I do not have room for it. Actually, Strionic is just triggered, which, is the thing I need to copy most anyway, but still not not happening with this deck. I need room. Alright, so Esper Sentinel has a lot more um, play to it in Brawl, I feel like taxing the opponent's mana in a heads up game to a degree is fine. Like, it's more annoying than it is powerful. But sometimes I get to draw the card just because they have to develop out their board and they need to cast their spell. And I can also grow the Esper Sentinel to the point where it's guaranteed to draw a card if I really want to. Whereas here it's like, yes, I can grow its power, and that will probably mean that I get to draw a card or two off of it if I keep doing that. But it grows a lot slower because we have to go through the entire turn cycle for me to earthbend onto it again. Yeah, I can see losing Esper Sentinel. I think it's a lot weaker here than it is in Brawl. I've never been a huge fan of things like Rhystic Study anyway, so I have to get rid of cards. Yeah, I'll probably get rid of Trove Warden at this point. It technically works in the deck, and it's a oddball card, but I still have to lose the Trove Warden eventually, without it being exiled. And I don't sacrifice my creatures particularly well in this deck until they become lands, until Ashaya shows up, so. Probably lose Resourceful Defenses for the same reason we're getting rid of um, the Ozolith. Yeah, we can probably get rid of the Pride one too. Despite it working very well with some of our other cards. Get rid of the branching evolution. Alright, that's 12 cards. So we're making good progress. I cut more than 10 cards today. So, just already. Now, granted, I had to cut half the cards on the list, so... only cutting 10% of them. I'm cutting 10% of them, though, so that's not terrible. Preston is still fine, but... Preston is one of those cards I can cut, but I'm definitely taking advantage of him with the things I have going on. Maybe I cut Black Panther. I probably cut Blaster at this point. If I'm getting rid of all of the 1-1 counter synergies, like, this feels like an entirely separate deck that I could build around Toph, is the whole 1-1 counter synergies with my artifact creatures and whatnot. So, we cut a bunch of the ones that care about 1-1 counters. I do think we can cut Black Panther also because of that. 14. I think the evolution Sage stays. I'm debating whether or not I should get rid of the one artifact creature, the Surge Conductor, that's similar to it. Alright, so how many cards do I have on the list right now? At 14. Alright. Uh, 107. Alright, so regardless of how many other cards I cut today, at least I got over 12 off of the list. So I do feel accomplished now. I do really like Jester's Mask. The problem is there are a bunch of cards on the list that I really like and think would be cool to have in the deck that I do not have room for if I just want the deck to actually, win some games. Like, yeah, I'll do a cool thing and then probably still not win because of that. Similarly, Storage Matrix is like, this card is fun. It's definitely messing with opponents and slowing them down dramatically because they either can't attack me because they're untapping their lands, or they're having their mana production crimped because they're choosing to untap their creatures. Or possibly both if they were ramping with artifacts while still, having a bunch of lands. So, there's a whole lot of things going on with Storage Matrix. But I don't know that it's enough. Also, there will be times where it's a little awkward for me, where my non-land creatures would probably like to untap. Or where Toph is suddenly dead, and now I have to actually choose between lands, creatures, and artifacts instead of getting spotted artifacts by choosing lands. Yeah, okay. I always hate cutting cards that are completely unique to a specific commander deck. Or it's like, no, this is the perfect deck for this card. I always feel a little bit bad cutting cards like that. But sometimes it's like, yeah, this is the perfect perfect deck for this card, but this is not the perfect card for this deck, and that makes me sad. Yeah, for the longest time, one of my main goals when building a commander deck was to jam at least one card that no other human being on the planet knows what the actual game text of the card is. Yes, obviously they do. There are people like me that do remember these weird janky cards from like 30 years ago, but I love having a card in the deck where the opponents have to stop, read it, and then try and process exactly what the card is doing in my deck. The more they have to process what the card is doing in my deck, the more I enjoy having the card. My favorite will always be from a deck that I took apart because the deck was terrible. Not bad like unplayable, bad like it is a misery to play against and not particularly fun to play with. At one point in time, I was like, okay, how many like 2 and 3 card insta win infinite combos can I jam into a single deck? And the answer was yes. And one of the cards that made it into the deck because it worked with so many different cards in it was a card called Mangara's Equity, um, which is it enters, you choose red or black, and whenever a source uh, deals damage to you or a permanent you control, you can deal that much damage to that source or that source's controller. So what I would do is I would name red. It was a Mardu deck. I would name red, and then I would have Boros, like I would deal damage to Boros Reckoner while he was indestructible, and have him deal the damage to himself, which now causes the enchantment to trigger to deal damage to himself. So now there are 2 instances of his trigger to redirect damage. One from him dealing damage to himself and one from the enchantment dealing damage to him. So I would have one of them shoot one of the players and the other one shoot himself again. And since he's indestructible, you can just keep looping forever until all of your opponents are dead. So, but I have like Boros Reckoner, Spite Mare, and uh, one of the other ones that could deal damage to any target. I forget what the third one was that was available at the time. Also, Stuffy Doll was in there, but he's not red. But I forget if I had a way to take care of that or not, where he could become red and just keep pinging himself over and over again to build up damage. But or keep getting pinged to build up damage. But yeah, there were a whole bunch. Like I'm pretty sure I had Guilty Conscience plus Stuffy Doll in there also, which one shots a single player because Stuffy Doll can only choose one player. But I love Stuffy Doll and I want him in the deck. Plus, Guilty Conscience on an indestructible Boros Reckoner also works. But yeah, I'd like the Sanguine Bond, um, Exquisite Blood, and like the similar cards at the time. It was just an awful deck though. Like it was not fun to play with because it was literally goldfishing the entire time. It's like, can I get to a position where I have 2 win cons in play without anybody disrupting one of them? And if the answer was yes, then I won the game. And if the answer was no, then I lost the game. But it it had no fun back and forth play to it. There was never like, oh hey, I'm winning the game and now I'm losing the game and now I've won the game. It's like I am not doing anything until I have won the game. Did I win the game? Yes. Okay, cool. We can move on then. Like, do you have an answer to my infinite combo? No. Okay, then we're done here. I won. Good job, me. Yeah, that was one of the few commander decks that I just took apart because I did not want to play it. Like it was not fun and I did not enjoy it. So I did at first, it was a fun novelty, it was a fun thought experiment. Actual playing the deck was awful. It's like, no, I don't like playing this. This does not feel fun when it's winning. So, in a casual format, when your deck doesn't feel fun when it's winning, it feels boring and repetitive, it's time to take the deck apart. Alright, so he probably cut Storage Matrix, as sad as that makes me. Yeah, we probably cut Amulet of Vigor. Rune Ghost is doing his best to bypass having to, like, Toph having to metal bend the thing just to blink it, but we have cards for that anyway that aren't a tiny creature that easily gets swept away by any mass removal spell, so. Green Suns, Mirror Works, Spine, Beast Within, Lantern, Courser, Nexus, Omnath. Maybe we just don't have room for the Haru combo. I could see getting rid of it. I got rid of it on Arena and Brawl, but that's because I have access to fewer of the cards that would let me do the cool thing with it. Like Retreat to Emeria is not on, so it's like Masswood Nexus type things. I think Masswood Nexus was on Arena. I forget it. I know I wound up cutting Haru, because I was underwhelmed by him, but even with the combo pieces, we don't need them. Like, we have plenty of other combos in the deck still. So yeah, let's get rid of Haru and Maskwood. Yes, yes, I bumped the wire from my phone. So now it's going to keep chiming at me. Maskwood and cut Haru. I think it's 1R, yeah. I didn't even touch it that time. Shut up. Alright, so... Oh, was it Battle for Zendikar that... No, it was regular Zendikar that Retreat came from. Or World Wake. It was World Wake, technically. Okay. I think... Yeah, I remember scrolling past... No, maybe it was from Battle for Zendikar. Okay. And then Felidar Retreat was from Zendikar Rising? Okay. I accept. Moving on. Not gonna lie, it could be Tireless Tracker. I think he has more play in Commander than Brawl. Like, you have more time to be cracking clues and growing him as a threat, so that way he can get in for, like, damage if the opponents are vulnerable. Obviously, he doesn't have Trample, so that might be a thing, but I do think you have more time to grind value in Commander a lot of the time. Whereas in Brawl, somebody is actively trying to kill you and you're down 15 life to start with. So, because I do use Tireless Provisioner, but not Tireless Tracker on Arena for that reason. Like, I don't think I have time to crack all the clues that I'd be making. I'll consider it. In the meantime, let's keep going. I don't think I'm ready to cut him just yet. Could still be Tomic. Oh, that's true. We should check Oswald, see if he's got like a full chain still. 5, 6. Because we're getting close to time anyway, and I do need to figure out if he actually still works. Let's see. Soul Ring is 1. There's a 5. The 0. So 0, 1, 5. 0, 1, 4, 5. 0, 1, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so we're up to 6. And then what's its name is 7, the Spine of Ishtar, and Meteor Golem. Alright, so we do have a full chain for Oswald, at the very least. I don't think I have any 8 or 9 drop artifacts. Alright, so we're conveniently back where Oswald is, so we can keep going. Do I get rid of the Thousand Moons Smithy? It is decent in the deck. Like, the pseudo construct that actually counts creatures in addition to artifacts is pretty. Is going to be a pretty huge creature a lot of the time in this deck. Like, it's going to be hard for it to be less than like a 3/3 or 4/4 most of the time. And a lot of the time, I believe it's going to be much larger than that. Yeah, it's an artifact, and the thing that made it is an artifact, so it's a 2/2 just on its own merits before we start adding in anything else. And earthbending onto it so that it can die to make another giant token while still being in play and therefore helping boost everything, all the tokens it's already made. I'm keeping it for right now, but there may come a time where it needs to go. I do still have enough colorless spells for Ugin, so he gets to stay. Yeah, I still kind of want to keep all of those. Keeping Tanic. Shoo, stop that. Terra Symbiosis, yes. Weapon Manufacturing is still incredibly strong in this deck. Like, we have multiple free sack outlets for artifacts, so if we're constantly recurring our non-token artifacts, this thing will keep churning out extra munitions each time that we can then sacrifice to deal damage. Could be a Lebu. Like, he's fine. He almost made it into the Brawl version of Toph, but I wound up cutting him towards the end. Yeah, I can see cutting him here again. He's decent, but not anything too impressive. The nice thing is that I can attack with something else and trigger him. Like, it just has to be um, one of my artifact creatures, not necessarily a Lebu. So that was helpful, especially since, if I can earthbend onto it, it attacking isn't even going to get it killed necessarily. Like, it'll get it killed, but it'll come back and then we'll have it again. Alright, we're past the 50-minute mark and we're down to 100 cards, so I feel accomplished. So we'll pick back up here next time. Thank you for watching, and I will see you then. Have a good rest of your day.